24 hours later, Karen's doorbell rang at precisely 8 a.m. She opened it to find not Martinez or Sandra, but Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down, Sandra's mother, and the neighborhood's unofficial gossip central. "Karen, dear, we need to talk," Mrs. Chen said, her weathered hands clutching a manila envelope. "About what my daughter has done." Karen stepped aside to let the elderly woman in, noting how Mrs. Chen's eyes immediately went to the spotless living room, the perfectly arranged flowers, the subtle signs of wealth and taste that Karen had carefully cultivated. "I brought tea," Mrs. Chen said, settling into Karen's white leather couch. "And an apology." "I'm listening," Karen said, though she remained standing. "Sandra told me about the emergency meeting, about the new bylaws." Mrs. Chen's voice carried the weight of disappointment. "I raised her better than that, Karen. Secret meetings, targeting neighbors. It's not right." Karen poured tea from the service she kept ready for such occasions. "Your daughter made her choice, Mrs. Chen. She chose sides." "She chose fear," Mrs. Chen corrected. "The other neighbors, they're scared of you, Karen. Scared of your standards, your success, your intensity." "Good," Karen said flatly. "Fear keeps people in line." "Does it?" Mrs. Chen opened the envelope, revealing a stack of photographs. "Because fear also makes people desperate, and desperate people do stupid things." Karen looked at the photos and felt her composure crack. They showed her house from multiple angles, her car, her daily routines. Someone had been watching her for weeks. "Martinez has been building a case," Mrs. Chen explained. "Not just about the pool or the bylaws. About everything. Your landscaping schedule, your visitors, your garbage pickup times. He's been trying to find something, anything to use against you." "Let him try," Karen said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "He found something," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "Your lawn service company. They're not licensed for Sunday work in this county. Every Sunday cleanup for the past 6 months has been a violation. That's 26 separate infractions, Karen, at $500 each." Karen's teacup rattled against the saucer. $13,000 in fines, plus legal fees, plus the precedent it would set. Martinez had found her weakness. The obsessive attention to detail that made her powerful had also made her vulnerable. "But," Mrs. Chen continued, "he doesn't have the photos yet. Sandra was supposed to deliver them today." Karen looked at the elderly woman with new respect. "What do you want?" "I want my neighborhood back," Mrs. Chen said simply. "Not the neighborhood you've created, and not the chaos that will happen if you and Martinez destroy each other. I want the neighborhood we had before everyone started choosing sides." "That neighborhood had brown lawns and cracked driveways," Karen said. "That neighborhood had block parties and friends who helped each other," Mrs. Chen countered. "When's the last time you had a real conversation with a neighbor, Karen? Not about bylaws or regulations, but about life?" Karen couldn't answer. The truth was, she couldn't remember. "I can make Sandra lose those photos," Mrs. Chen continued. "But only if you're willing to lose something too." "What?" "Your need to control everything. Your need to be right all the time. Your need to be feared instead of respected." Karen stared out her window at the perfect neighborhood she'd created, seeing it suddenly through different eyes. Every pristine lawn, every perfectly painted fence, every regulation-compliant mailbox, all of it built on fear and resentment instead of community pride. "The neighborhood association meeting is tomorrow night," Mrs. Chen said. "Sandra will be there with the photos. Unless what?" Mrs. Chen smiled. "Unless you give them a reason to choose hope over fear." Karen's phone buzzed with notifications as she toweled off, each message a small victory. Her lawyer, her city councilman brother, her contact at the county assessor's office, all responding to her carefully worded texts. Martins and Sandra watched nervously as she smiled at each response. "Problem, Officer Martinez?" Karen asked, not looking up from her phone. "You seem anxious." "Ma'am, threatening HOA officials is a serious matter," Martinez said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Threatening?" Karen's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "I simply pointed out the reality of our situation. This neighborhood's success depends on expertise and connections. Remove the expertise, use the connections. Basic cause and effect. Sandra stepped forward. Karen, this doesn't have to escalate. We can work something out. Work something out? Karen's voice was silk over steel. You held a secret meeting to target me while I was watching my mother die. You created fake regulations to justify harassment. And now you want to work something out. Her phone buzzed again. This time, her smile was genuinely warm. Oh, how interesting. That's my brother calling from the city planning office. Apparently, there's been a complaint about this subdivision's drainage system. Something about potential flooding issues that might require extensive investigation. Martinez and Sandra exchanged glances. A city drainage investigation could tie up the neighborhood in red tape for months, destroying property values and blocking old improvements. You wouldn't, Sandra whispered. Wouldn't I? Karen's voice was conversational, almost friendly. You've clearly forgotten who you're dealing with. I didn't become HOA president by being nice, Sandra. I became president by being effective. And effective people protect their investments. This is extortion, Martinez said, his face reddening. No, Karen corrected. This is Tuesday. I've been protecting this neighborhood's interests for 3 years. The only difference is that now you're on the wrong side of those interests. She answered her phone on the 4th ring. Hi, Tommy. Yes. I got your message about the drainage complaint. Very concerning. I think we definitely need a full investigation. She paused, listening, her smile growing wider. 6 months minimum. That long? Well, if it's necessary for public safety. Sandra grabbed Martinez's arm. We need to go. Now. But Karen wasn't finished. Actually, Tommy, while I have you on the phone, I should mention some concerning activities I've observed. Potential bylaw violations that might affect the neighborhood's legal standing with the city. Yes, I'll email you the details. She hung up and turned to face Martinez and Sandra, her expression serene. Gentlemen, ladies, it's been a pleasure. I do hope you'll be more careful about due process in the future. Secret meetings can be so problematic. What do you want? Sandra asked quietly. What I've always wanted, Karen replied. A well-run neighborhood with proper standards. The only question is whether you're going to help maintain those standards or whether you're going to be obstacles to them. Martinez tried one last time. Ma'am, you can't just. Can't what? Karen's voice cut through his protest. Can't protect my property. Can't use my connections to benefit the neighborhood. Can't defend myself against harassment and fake regulations. She leaned back against the pool railing, completely relaxed now. Officer Martinez, I've been fighting for this neighborhood longer than you've been carrying that clipboard. I've tangled with city planners, contractors, and 3 different HOA boards. Did you really think you could intimidate me with a mango-stained shirt and some hastily written bylaws? The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap. Karen Weatherby's perfectly manicured fingers gripped the mango slice as she lounged in her pristine pool, the crystalline water reflecting her designer sunglasses. The fruit was the only thing disrupting the geometric perfection of her backyard, until Officer Martinez from the HOA Compliance Division appeared at her gate with his clipboard and scowl. Ma'am, we've received multiple complaints about your pool maintenance schedule, Martinez called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been challenged by a suburban housewife. According to Bylaw 47C, pools must be cleaned on designated days only. Karen's grip tightened on the mango. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, had memorized every bylaw, and knew Martinez was fishing for violations. Her pool was spotless, cleaned daily by her service, a luxury that apparently triggered her neighbor's jealousy. Officer Martinez, she said, her voice honey-sweet with underlying steel, I believe you'll find my pool maintenance is entirely compliant. Perhaps you should check your facts before making accusations. Martinez stepped closer, his badge glinting in the afternoon sun. I have photographic evidence of daily cleaning trucks, ma'am. That's excessive and affects neighborhood property values through increased traffic. The mango slice flew from Karen's hand before she could stop herself. It struck Martinez square in the chest, leaving a sticky orange trail down his crisp white shirt. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. Did you just assault an HOA officer? Martinez's voice climbed an octave. Karen's mind raced. 3 years of dealing with petty complaints. 3 years of Martinez's power trips. 3 years of being the neighborhood's unofficial villain simply because she maintained standards. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings, but the primal part, the part that had clawed its way to HOA presidency, whispered something else entirely. I didn't assault anyone, Karen said, rising from the pool in one fluid motion. Water cascaded from her toned figure as she stepped onto the deck. I merely disposed of organic waste in the direction of someone who clearly belongs with the garbage. Martinez fumbled for his radio. I need backup at 425 Maple Grove. We have a hostile resident. Karen's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Hostile? You haven't seen Hostile yet, Martinez. You want to play games with bylaws and regulations. Fine. But remember, I wrote half of them. She moved toward the pool's edge when Martinez stood, her wet feet leaving perfect prints on the stone. The officer took a step back, suddenly uncertain. Ma'am, I'm warning you. Warning me. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than a shout. You're in my backyard, on my property, making false accusations. I think you're confused about who should be warning whom. The pool filter hummed softly in the background, the only sound as Karen and Martinez faced off in the afternoon heat. The vote was closer than Karen expected, but it passed. As she stood in the parking lot, Sandra approached with the envelope of photos. What should I do with these? Sandra asked. Karen smiled, a real smile this time, not the sharp weapon she'd wielded for 3 years. Keep them. As a reminder that even perfect neighborhoods need imperfect people. She walked home through streets she'd helped perfect, past houses she'd helped improve, carrying the weight of relationships she still needed to repair. Tomorrow, she'd start knocking on doors, not to enforce rules, but to meet neighbors, not to maintain standards, but to build community. The pool still gleamed in her backyard, but now it seemed less like a fortress and more like a place where she might, someday, invite friends over for an afternoon swim. But first, she had 26 apology letters to write. To be continued. Officer Martinez's backup arrived in the form of Sandra Chen, HOA treasurer and Karen's former ally. Sandra's sensible flask clicked against the pool deck as she approached, her expression carefully neutral. Karen, we need to talk, Sandra said, her voice carrying the weight of their shared history. This isn't the way to handle disputes. Karen's laugh was bitter. Disputes? Is that what we're calling harassment now? She gestured at Martinez, who was still picking mango fibers from his shirt. He comes to my home, makes false accusations, and somehow I'm the problem? You threw fruit at an HOA officer, Sandra said quietly. That's not exactly presidential behavior. Presidential? Karen's voice cracked like a whip. I've been president for 3 years, Sandra. 3 years of dealing with complaints about my garden being too perfect, my house being too clean, my car being too new. When exactly did maintaining standards become a crime? Martinez cleared his throat. Ma'am, if you just comply with the poolside furniture regulations. What poolside furniture regulations? Karen spun toward him, water still dripping from her hair. There are no poolside furniture regulations. I checked. Twice. Sandra shifted uncomfortably. Actually, Karen, there are new regulations. Emergency Bylaw 73X, passed last week during the special session. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. She'd missed the special session, the first HOA meeting she'd missed in 3 years, because her mother was in the hospital. The same mother who taught her that appearances mattered, that standards were everything, that backing down was surrender. What emergency session? Karen's voice was dangerously quiet. The one called to address community concerns about certain residents' behavior, Sandra said, unable to meet Karen's eyes. Karen understood immediately. While she'd held her dying mother's hand, her own HOA had held a secret meeting to strip away her authority. The mango incident wasn't random harassment. It was a setup. So this is a coup, Karen said, her voice gaining strength. You waited until I was dealing with a family crisis to change the rules specifically to target me. It's not targeting anyone, Martinez interjected. It's about community standards. Community standards? Karen's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. I am the community standards. I spent 3 years turning this neighborhood from a collection of broken-down houses into a respectable community. Property values have doubled under my watch. And you've made enemies of half the residents in the process, Sandra said softly. Karen stared at her former friend, seeing the truth in Sandra's eyes. This wasn't about pool maintenance or furniture regulations. This was about power, fear, and the price of perfection. You're right, Karen said, her voice suddenly calm. I have made enemies, but I've also made this neighborhood worth living in. And if you think a few hastily written bylaws are going to stop me from defending what I've built, you're both idiots. She turned toward the pool, her reflection wavering in the chlorinated water. Officer Martinez, I believe you were saying something about needing backup? Ma'am? Karen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Because if you're going to arrest me for defending my property, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. This neighborhood runs on my connections, my expertise, and my money. Remove me, and watch how quickly your perfect little community falls apart. The threat hung in the air like humidity before a storm. The community center had never been so packed. Karen arrived fashionably late. Noting how conversations stopped as she entered, she'd chosen her outfit carefully, not the power suit they expected, but simple jeans and a cardigan that made her look approachable rather than intimidating. Sandra sat at the front table, the manila envelope visible beside her notes. Martinez stood by the door, his uniform crisp and his expression smug. Mrs. Chen gave Karen an almost imperceptible nod from the third row. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandra began, her voice shaking slightly. We're here tonight to address ongoing issues with community standards and enforcement. Karen raised her hand. Point of order. I'd like to speak first. You're not on the agenda, Martinez said quickly. I don't need to be on the agenda. I'm still a resident, and this is still a community meeting. Karen's voice carried easily through the room. Unless we're abandoning democratic process entirely? Sandra hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Karen walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking on the linoleum. She'd practiced this speech, but now, facing her neighbors' worry faces, she threw her notes away. 3 years ago, I became HOA president because no one else wanted the job, she began. This neighborhood was falling apart. Property values were dropping, maintenance was ignored, and nobody seemed to care. I cared. Maybe too much. She paused, looking at faces she'd seen for years, but never really known. I made this neighborhood successful. Property values doubled, problems got solved, standards improved. But I also made enemies, because I forgot that success means nothing if you're alone at the top. Someone in the back coughed. Karen continued. Officer Martinez has photos of my lawn service working on Sundays. 26 violations, $13,000 in fines. He's technically right. I broke the rules. But here's what those photos don't show. I was breaking those rules because Mrs. Patterson in the corner house called me every Sunday morning, worried about her dying roses. My landscaper came on Sundays because that's when Mrs. Patterson was home to learn how to care for her garden. Karen saw Mrs. Patterson's eyes widen in surprise. She'd never told anyone about those Sunday visits. The photos don't show that I'd personally paid for the Martinez family's fence repair when the storm knocked it down, because I knew they couldn't afford it. They don't show that I've been covering the HOA fees for 3 elderly residents who are on fixed incomes, because I didn't want them to lose their homes. The room was dead silent now. Even Martinez looked uncomfortable. But they also don't show that I've been so focused on maintaining standards that I forgot to maintain relationships. I've been so busy being right that I stopped being human, and that's on me. Karen reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. This is my resignation as HOA president, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the room. Sandra half rose from her chair. But Karen continued, I'm not leaving the neighborhood. I'm just changing how I contribute to it. Instead of enforcing rules, I want to help build community. Instead of finding violations, I want to help solve problems. Instead of being the HOA president everyone fears, I want to be the neighbor everyone can count on. She placed the resignation letter on the table. Officer Martinez, your photos show violations. You're right, but they also show someone who cares enough to break rules for the right reasons. The question isn't whether I broke the rules. It's whether this community wants to be about punishment or about people. Karen turned to face the room one more time. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do better, to be better, to help build something worth living in, not just looking at. She walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Martinez, you might want to check county records. That drainage investigation I mentioned, it's being mysteriously cancelled. Turns out the complaint was withdrawn. The room erupted in conversation as Karen left, but she heard Mrs. Chen's voice rise above the chaos. I nominate Karen Weatherby for Community Relations Coordinator. All in favor?